During the Vietnam War, 236 Medals of Honor were awarded, with 156 presented posthumously, and since 1978 a further 33 awards have been presented. Of the 269 medals in total, 180 were awarded to the U.S. Army, 15 to the U.S. Navy, 58 to the United States Marine Corps, and 14 to the United States Air Force. War has a way of creating legends, but a few stories of heroism rival the greatest fiction. In the heart of the Vietnam War, wounded, outnumbered, and facing impossible odds, one man defied death itself again and again to save his fellow soldiers. His actions would earn him the Medal of Honor and a place in military history. But his path to valor wasn't just forged on the battlefield. It was built upon a lifetime of grit, sacrifice, and an unbreakable will. Those who earned that distinction of receiving the Medal of Honor spanned every presidency from Lyndon B. Johnson forward, as 33 Medals of Honor were retroactively awarded to various men due to lost recommendation paperwork, oversight, or a reevaluation of their actions. One of these was U.S. Army Special Forces Master Sergeant Roy P. Benavidez, a soldier, hero, and a symbol of what the human spirit can endure. Who was Roy Benavidez? What actions earned him the Medal of Honor? Why was his award delayed? What is his legacy? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. Roy Perez Benavidez was born August 5, 1935 in Lindenau, Texas, and he was a descendant of the founders of Benavidez, Texas. He grew up in abject poverty. His father, Salvador Benavidez Jr., was a Mexican farmer who died of tuberculosis when he was 2 years old. His mother, Teresa Perez, was a Yaqui Indian who remarried, but she also died from tuberculosis only 5 years later. And Roy and his younger brother, Roger, moved to El Campo, where their grandfather, uncle, and aunt raised them, along with 8 cousins. Roy Benavidez shined shoes at the local bus station and worked on farms in Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado, and also worked at a tire shop in El Campo. But he had to drop out of school at age 15 to work supporting the family. Then Benavidez enlisted in the Texas Army National Guard in 1952 during the Korean War. In June 1955, he joined the Army active duty, completed airborne training, and was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He married Hilaria Lala Coy in 1959. Then Benavidez returned to Fort Bragg and became a member of the 5th Special Forces Group as a weapons specialist and cross-trained as a medic. In 1965, he went to South Vietnam, where he went on a solo reconnaissance mission to gather intelligence on enemy troops, and he stepped on a landmine during a patrol and was evacuated to Fort Sam Houston's Brooke Army Medical Center. He was told that he would never walk again.
I woke up at Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. I was declared never to walk again.
And they began preparing his medical discharge papers, but he was determined to recover, and at night, against medical orders, he walked doing his own physical therapy. After more than a year of hospitalization, Benavidez walked out of the hospital in July 1966 with his wife at his side, but the chronic pain endured, and he returned to South Vietnam in January 1968. On May 2, 1968, west of Loc Ninh, a 12-man Special Forces patrol with 9 Montagnards was surrounded by 1,000 NVA. Benavidez heard the call on the radio and boarded a helicopter to respond. He arrived by jumping from the helicopter from a height of 30 to 40 feet off the ground, carrying only his medical bag and a knife as he ran to help the patrol. As he approached the patrol, he was attacked and bayoneted by an enemy soldier. He pulled out the bayonet and, using his own knife, killed the NVA soldier, leaving his own knife in the man's abdomen and taking the dead man's AK-47, with which he killed 2 more enemy soldiers while providing cover fire for the people boarding the helicopter. The battle to secure the landing zone and evacuate the wounded as well as the dead lasted 6 hours, during which time Benavidez was eventually shot a total of 37 times and had multiple shrapnel wounds. During all of this, he had managed to carry at least 10 soldiers to the various helicopters landing on the LZ, and he was wounded each time, but he fought back, securing the extraction point, which he kept from being overrun. The numbers of the enemy he killed is still unknown. After the last medevac bird landed, Benavidez needed help and was lifted into the chopper, where he passed out from blood loss. Believed to be dead upon landing, he was placed in a body bag at the base camp until a friend checked on him, and a doctor responded. Unbelievably, he was still alive. This detailed report pieced together all of the other fragmented accounts given by the 8 men that Benavidez had saved, as well as the accounts from the medevac pilots picking up the wounded and the dead, who did not know who Benavidez was. Your humble narrator had the great fortune to know Roy and spoke with him on a few occasions, as we had mutual friends. Despite his unbelievable exploits and his fierce courage as a warrior, he was actually one of the nicest and most humorous men I ever met, as well as quite humble. When I asked him what was going through his mind during that 6-hour firefight against hundreds of enemies determined to kill all of them, he said this: "You can't think about what if, only what you can do. I knew that some of those men were dead, and all were wounded, including me, but I'll be damned if I will ever let a dead soldier fall into enemy hands. If they wanted our bodies, then they were going to climb over their own mountain of their own dead to get us." Benavidez once again arrived at Fort Sam Houston, and after another year, he eventually recovered. Due to the various after-action reports when the team was debriefed, he received the Distinguished Service Cross while in the hospital for extraordinary heroism and 4 Purple Hearts, in addition to the first one that he had received from stepping on the landmine. Upon recovering in 1969, he was assigned to Fort Riley, Kansas, until 1972 when he was assigned to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, where he remained until retirement. But some of the men Benavidez had helped save had given their after-action reports, which were fragmented and hazy, as all had been wounded, many were on morphine, but they stated his heroism. However, in 1973, Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel Ralph R. Drake had studied the combat action. He read the statements from the Special Forces soldiers and the helicopter pilots who witnessed his courage and insisted that Benavidez receive the Medal of Honor. By then, however, the time limit on the Medal of Honor recommendation had long expired, and a successful appeal to Congress did result in an exemption for Benavidez's case, but the Army Decorations Board denied him an upgrade of his Distinguished Service Cross to the Medal of Honor. That was because the Army required an eyewitness account from someone present during the action, and Benavidez believed that there were no living witnesses of the events of that day who could provide a full report. This was due to so many men being dead and wounded who were thrown onto helicopters by Benavidez, and they did not all know him or remembered what had happened clearly. It seemed that the matter was finally put to rest, but there was in fact a living witness who could detail everything that Benavidez did during those 6 hours. His name was Brian O'Connor, and he was living in the Fiji Islands. He was the radioman on their Special Forces team in Vietnam, and he had been severely wounded, and Benavidez thought he was dead when he threw him on one of the helicopters under intense fire, which also saw Benavidez shot a few more times, but O'Connor did survive and was evacuated to the United States before he could be fully debriefed by the S2. In 1980, while on a holiday trip in Australia, O'Connor read a newspaper account of Benavidez, originally published in an El Campo newspaper, which had been picked up by the United Press International and reprinted in Australia. O'Connor immediately contacted Benavidez and submitted a 10-page report of the encounter. O'Connor's report made its way up the chain of command and landed on the desk of the Secretary of the Army. After reading O'Connor's report confirming the accounts provided by others, Benavidez's Distinguished Service Cross was upgraded to the Medal of Honor. Roy Benavidez is an Army Special Forces legend, and he was a good man. On February 24, 1981, President Ronald Reagan presented Roy Benavidez with the Medal of Honor in the Pentagon. Reagan turned to the press and said, "If the story of his heroism were a movie script, you would not believe it." Reagan then read the official award citation stating that Benavidez has distinguished himself by a series of daring and extremely valorous actions, and because of his gallant choice to join voluntarily his comrades who were in critical straits, to expose himself constantly to withering enemy fire, and his refusal to be stopped despite numerous severe wounds, and saved the lives of at least 8 men. Roy Benavidez himself wrote 3 autobiographical books about his life and military experiences. and he has many schools, parks, and other locations named after him. The portion of Texas State Highway 71 in Wharton County, Texas, where Benavidez grew up, located between Colorado County line and FM 2765, is designated the Roy Benavidez Memorial Highway. The USNS Benavidez, a U.S. Navy Bob Hope-class roll-on, roll-off cargo vessel, is named in his honor. There is also the Roy P. Benavidez American Legion Post No. 400 in San Antonio, Texas, and Roy P. Benavidez Armor Reserve Center and Naval Air Station, Corpus Christi, Texas. There were discussions in Congress about renaming Fort Hood as Fort Benavidez as a part of an ongoing movement to rename installations and institutions originally carrying the names of Confederate generals by the Biden administration, which did rename some bases. Roy Perez Benavidez died on November 29, 1998, at the age of 63 at Brooke Army Medical Center, having suffered respiratory failure and complications of diabetes. He laid in state at St. Robert Bellarmine Catholic Church, where he and his 3 children were married and all attended Mass every Sunday. His body was returned to Fort Sam Houston's main chapel for a public viewing. Family friend Archbishop Patrick Flores of the Archdiocese of San Antonio presided over a funeral mass at San Fernando Cathedral, located in San Antonio. Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez was buried with full military honors at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery. Roy Benavidez's Medal of Honor is on display at the Ronald Reagan Library, along with a video of him receiving the medal from President Reagan. Men like Roy Benavidez do not come any tougher. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.